Hello, hello, and welcome to the show. It's pretty simple. We're three friends who love TV shows. We pick a show to watch every month, and we get together here to talk about it. And we're so glad that you've decided to join us. In this episode, we will be discussing the 2020 second season of the TBS original anthology comedy series from Simon Rich. The earth is flat, the devil is real, the sun is crazy, and that is all we know. Today on the show, Miracle Workers Dark Ages. I'm one of your hosts, Jay. Today I'm joined by my panel of experts, Aaron and Tony. Gentlemen, welcome back to the show. Good listeners, you can find me online at Jay Suespante. Aaron, where can we find you?
At Tenacious Aaron on Twitter.
And Tony?
You can find me on Twitter or Instagram at tpinquite.
Well, welcome into the show. Welcome, listeners. We're here to talk about second season of Miracle Workers, which is a little bit out of ordinary for us because I think this is the first time that we've ever just kind of jumped into a show rather than going for the first season, right?
Yeah, I can't think of a single show where we started with the second season.
So the part of the thinking process here was very specific to Miracle Workers. As I said, this is a anthology series. We've now had 3 seasons produced, and each one it's a true anthology. Each one is completely separated from the others, apart from common cast, common writing staff, kind of common themes. But the story, at least, is each time self-contained.
And it appears each season is based off of a short story by the showrunner, Rich. So I think that's also kind of one of the reasons why it's called Miracle Workers. Me and Christy kind of debated that like after, and again, I know we didn't watch the first season for the show, but after the first season, Miracle Workers as a name doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And so like if you're coming into watching the second season, it kind of almost throws you if you haven't seen the first one.
Yeah, that's very true. Tony, did you watch any of the first season?
I did not, so I could be a control group for the audience.
Okay,
someone who did not watch the first. And I guess the third one's already started, right? Or is it coming out soon?
Yeah, it's already over.
Okay. I liked it a lot, so I need to watch the first and the third.
I'm glad to hear it. Aaron, from what I understand, you did watch the first season?
So before we started, Christy and I talked about it, and we were like, well, it's only 7 episodes for the first season. Let's just go ahead and watch it. Then we'll go right into the second season. And so we watched the first season, and then we start the second season, and I was extremely confused because I didn't fully appreciate like just how anthological it was. So I'm like, okay, wow, this really is just a complete, like, unrelated. I was like waiting for some type of connection back to the characters in some way. For example, like in Fargo, even though it's an anthological story, it's the same universe, the same city, kind of like the same family lines. So there's at least a connection to the anthological seasons. It just is telling like specific stories in different time periods. But this was like just nope, going a different route.
Because season 1, we're in heaven, which is depicted as basically like an industrial facility of a very, God Inc. is a big corporation, and Steve Buscemi playing God, he's decided to destroy the world, and it revolves around Daniel Radcliffe, who plays an angel, and his co-worker played by Geraldine Viswanathan, which she's been fantastic, by the way. But the two of them basically make a deal that if they're able to pull off this incredible miracle, then that will convince Steve Buscemi not to destroy the world. While season 2, obviously, it's basically a domestic sitcom set in a kind of ridiculous medieval times.
So Tony, I don't know if you have seen Plebs, but we watched Plebs in the early days of the show. And I have to say, there were a lot of moments that it was familiar, or it harkened back to Plebs for me while watching this season.
I have not. Is that a similar setting where it's like the Middle Ages also in a comedy, or?
It is a sitcom that is set in ancient Rome, but it's kind of like a modern telling of life in ancient Rome. So like, they're living in apartments, but they're like shitty wood apartments, like, with like hay and the animals living there with you, but you're like, oh, I live down at the apartments off of Caesar Street. So it's a little, it feels more normalized to modern culture and dialogue and behavior. And I felt like that's kind of how this was, with like the therapy and, the awkward dating and getting a job and it's the boss's kid and stuff like that. Like it was a lot of modern tropes, ideas, stories, but set in medieval times. And that's kind of how I saw Plebs too, is just set in Roman times.
A lot of modern terms and stuff, like words. There's definitely a lot of anachronisms in this show.
Yeah, I also got very. Go ahead.
The king at one point, like I guess it's the therapy episode. He's like something. Apparently, I've been getting faded off this potion or something. It made me laugh.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's basically what this whole second season is, and you can tell it straight off the bat from the episode titles. We've got graduation, help wanted, road trip, internship, music festival. It's all exactly like you said, Aaron. These modern situations, but in a medieval setting, played for laughs. And sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. For me, it very much more often than not worked.
I agree. I think that most times I thought they did a great job. It was great executed. I will say though, again, maybe I'm just the weird bird in modern comedy, but a lot of the just kind of like heavy cringe doses, like where it was just like, just a groaner for a long time. But I have to say, Daniel Radcliffe's performance in this season was phenomenal.
He's so funny. Just I think he doesn't get credit for how well he can play that comedic character.
Yeah, no, his timing is good. His performance, I will say that to me, he stole the second season. Like his performance, he was the part that I laughed at the most. The ridiculous situations. My God, whenever they burned down the house from shoveling shit like that, I laughed so fucking hard.
I did get the same vibe. Yeah, I think even as early as the first episode, where I think when we watched Future Man, I don't know if it was before the pod or on the pod, I was like, Josh Hutcherson has been wasted, basically. I kind of feel like Daniel Radcliffe's been wasted, like, as the show points out. Like, yeah, I kind of feel bad about Harry Potter being such a huge worldwide phenomenon, because I've really, like, all the movies I've seen he's done after that I've enjoyed him in. And same with this TV show.
So are you saying that starring in the Harry Potter films was akin to Daniel Radcliffe drinking the blood of a unicorn? Because it's obviously created his acting life, but at a price.
I guess so. It was basically like the
Is
Star
that a specific
Wars
Harry Potter reference or something?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. It's like Star Wars for everyone except for Harrison Ford, basically. Like, I don't know who's Harrison Ford of Harry Potter. I don't think it's Daniel. Emma Watson kind of just disappeared everywhere. It was never Rupert Grint, so I don't think anyone really made it out that wasn't already famous before.
Just curious, because I agree with your assessment, Tony. I think that Daniel Radcliffe is one of those people that is just underutilized, underappreciated. Swiss Army Man was one of those movies that I thought was very fascinating, interesting, and a great choice for him. But did you see like Guns Akimbo or something like that? Like some of these other movies that he did that are really weird?
No, I've seen Horns. I really liked Horns.
I haven't seen Horns. You need to watch Guns Akimbo. It is like they basically bolt guns to his hands.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's him running around trying to save his girlfriend with guns bolted to his hands.
Man, that's an Aaron movie. That's 100% Aaron movie.
Oh, it's fun. It's not good, but it's fun.
Do we need to summarize the world or anything? I guess there's not really
I guess the only thing I would summarize. The only thing I would summarize is there's this one dichotomy that the whole show kind of is told through, and that is the life of the shit shoveler family and the life of the royal family. Like, it seems like every single episode, somehow the stories were told like it tied to these two families, which I thought was great because it kind of shows classism again, allows a little bit of exploration of modern commentary, things like that, different views, different perspectives, which I thought was great, and I thought they really utilized it well. And I also liked I liked a lot of the things that made it. I've always said this, but I feel like humans haven't changed a whole lot. Technology, information, all that stuff has, but we've kind of always been the same. We've been petty, greedy, altruistic, all these different things. And I feel like this show really captured that feeling for me.
Yeah, definitely. That kind of that exact theme of that times might change, but the nature of humanity in a lot of ways stays the same. As I'm a lover of history, and that's a concept that's very attractive to me, and I think this show bears that out well.
I liked it. I even like this really super small role characters. Like I almost wish there was more than these 10 episodes, because like the Oracle cracked me up. Even like the gang of bullies that picked on Al was pretty funny.
The hag.
Oh, the hag, yeah.
The Oracle.
The druid. The Oracle he had some good lines there.
There's some really fantastic like that guys of television production in the show, like the Steve Buscemi's friend who's always saying he's the great guy. Seen that guy in a million things, couldn't tell you his name. I think according to Wikipedia it's Tony Cavallero.
I think he actually just passed away, didn't he?
Oh no, Tony.
Money.
Well, this one's still alive, and it says he was born in 1983, so that's not who I was thinking of.
Okay, no, there was somebody I felt like I remember seeing in the show who actually just saw he was in a bunch of stuff with Tim Allen.
But the Town Crier, love the Town Crier. For any of our long-term listeners, that is Jamie Demetriou, and he's actually the star of Staff Lets Flats, which is a show that I've tried to nominate a couple times unsuccessfully. And that show stars him and Nadja from What We Do in the Shadows, and it's amazing.
I remember watching the first episode of that. We definitely need to watch it.
And I want to say those two actors, they're siblings. They're brother and sister.
Nadja and Town Crier?
Yeah.
Oh. I still need to get on season 3 of What We Do in the Shadows.
Ooh, I've been working my way through it, and it's been pretty good.
Yeah, I'm about halfway through. I haven't got to finish it, but it's good. It's worth watching. Now, I guess let's look looking at this season of Miracle Workers. And I'll say it, my favorite character obviously was Daniel Radcliffe. You guys, what do you think? Who's your favorite?
I think Steve Buscemi.
Yeah, that's a good choice. I think for me, I always really enjoyed when the King got involved, because that his whole joke of sucking you in, making you think that he's going to do something kind of evolved and not macho, and then he just laughs in your face and cuts your head off. Just they did that a few times, and it made me laugh.
Yeah, that was perfect casting right there.
The King scene where Chauncey asked him to intervene and fix their court system. And it just like cuts to him. There's like blood running down his nose. He's like, yeah, dead. Never mind. Not a thing. Not an issue. Yeah. Oh, okay, cool.
I mean, not to mention the performance from Peter Serafinowicz. He was the roommate in Shaun of the Dead. The one who's always complaining about the door being open, and
he also is in Black Books. He was the guy that did the radio show that Fran was obsessed with.
Oh yeah, he was. Oh, it has been so long since I watched Black Books.
Is he on Guardians of the Galaxy, the first one? Isn't he one of like the main alien race people that works with John C. Reilly? He's kind of like the leader. Kind of, spoiler alert, sacrifices himself at the end with like a million other of those. Forget that.
I think you're right. He was one of the pilots.
He's like a captain pilot or something.
Denarian Garthan Saul?
Is that the character's name?
That's what he's credited as in Guardians of the Galaxy. Actually, a film I have not seen.
Oh, spoiler alert.
You haven't. Hold up. What? It's 2021. We've gone through like the era of Marvel, and you didn't watch Guardians of the Galaxy?
I saw the second one because the girl I was dating at the time.
Fucking makes sense.
I don't really like Marvel. Like
I fully appreciate that. I'm just saying, why on earth would you agree to watch Guardians of the Galaxy 2 without seeing 1, especially if you don't like Marvel?
Well, sometimes we make hard decisions for the people we love.
I would at least have made myself watch the first one first.
I probably should have. I think I tried at one point, like a lot of those Marvel movies. I tried to watch Endgame and had no fucking clue what was going on.
Well, you can't skip to the end, yeah.
What was the one that came before Endgame? I tried to watch the one before Endgame.
Infinity War?
Yeah, and they were like in a spaceship, and I was like, they have spaceships?
If you don't just start over, Jay, at this point, and just start with Iron Man, you're just lost.
There's like 30 or 40 hours of character development that you've missed out on.
I think I'm okay.
It's strong to call it character development. I enjoy it. They're entertaining. It's like, well, they're not as bad as Fast and Furious, but like, Fast and Furious, they're not going to win the Oscar, but they're entertaining. They are entertaining. Fair enough.
So, Jay, you had said, yeah, you had said that there were some things that didn't work. I'm curious, what was something that didn't work for you?
Well, I guess one very specific instance that sticks in my mind is actually something you mentioned earlier, which was when Daniel Radcliffe had his internship as a shit shoveler, and I think him being so bad at shoveling shit that he burned down the house. I think it was funny the first time, but they came back to that 2 or 3 times, and that it had kind of a law of diminishing returns for me on that. I think there were also a couple episodes in here that just kind of dragged a little bit. But I think my biggest complaint is that the biggest arc in this show is the romance between Prince Chauncey, Daniel Radcliffe, and the shit shoveler's daughter. And while they did have chemistry together, I don't really think that they sold the romantic chemistry for me.
I would agree with that. I thought that I felt like at times that they chose to go the route to be, again, cringy, awkward for the laugh, but it also kind of undermined the story that they were telling. So I could agree with that.
Yeah, the season's too short for them to mess around, still be messing around with that in episode. Looks like episode 8 is called First Date, so they're still messing around with that 80% through the whole season.
Yeah, I think some of those early episodes they dragged a little bit before we really got Daniel Radcliffe and Geraldine Viswanathan together. However, I will say I think it was the end of the road trip episode where they come together. Maybe I've got it wrong, but the road trip episode with Daniel Radcliffe and Lord Vexler going to the Valdrogians, hilarious, absolutely amazing. Because you're expecting Prince Chauncey to be to make a fool of himself, to create this terrible situation, but then it just turns out that just like in modern times, connections are really what drives progress. So the relationship between Daniel Radcliffe and the Valdrogian prince, it turns out that's what's going to make the peace between them, rather than Lord Vexler trying to do diplomacy. And now that I'm saying this, I want to change my favorite character. It was Lord Vexler. Lord
that's
Vexler.
A good choice. Yeah, that's good.
And he's actually the reason why in Succession, where I seem to really fixate on Stewie a lot, because he felt so similar to Lord Vexler.
Stewie, the younger brother.
Is he
Stewie
Culkin?
No, Stewie was the now I'm blanking on names. Jeremy Strong, the main dude. Kendall. He was Kendall's friend from college, who was like the angel investor.
Oh yeah.
that kind of like snarky confidence that like he's always got something back to throw back at you. Yeah, just his Vexler's whole vibe, loved it.
I think that what we're kind of coming to, or at least through this conversation, what I'm kind of coming to realize is that the downside of doing an anthological show like this is that you do not have the luxury of as much character development as you would with a traditional show, because you don't have a season 2, you don't have any additional episodes, you have whatever you're slotted for to tell your story, and that's it. And so I feel like the slog that you're talking about is kind of how much set and setting they had to lay out in order for us to really be immersed into this world for the jokes to hit. And then by the time you're kind of there, and they're telling the story of the shit shoveler's daughter and the king's son, we're at the end of the show.
Mm-hmm.
And so it just has to land, and they just do.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Like you've got to expend so much effort at the beginning that maybe some of it gets lost. And not to get too far ahead, but season 3, I definitely felt the same. I didn't really, there wasn't really an episode of season 3 that really made me laugh and really liked it until about episode 4 or 5. But of course, we're not here to talk about season 3. We're here to talk about season 2.
I think part of it, it's like, yeah, I guess they just drop plots, and that when they drop them so fast, it makes them feel like they were just like a segue or a stepping stone to get to where the next part, instead of like part of the story. Because there's like one episode that deals with her friendship with her best friend, and they kind of correlate it to modern times. Like one has a successful career and the other one isn't, and one wants to get out. And like, so it was a good storyline, but basically that whole, like, they basically dropped the entire friendship after that. The convent friend shows up from time to time, but there's no after effects of what happens in that episode. Really, a lot of the episodes, I guess, there's like nothing carrying through. It's just kind of like, we need this to get to this point. So it doesn't really feel like it's part of the whole journey, I guess.
I want to get on my soapbox and complain about the one joke I want to complain about in this entire show. And it was at the very end, whenever the shit shoveler's daughter was like, "Hey, you should come with us to France," to her friend. And she's like, it's going to take a month to travel there. There's no way I'm going to do that. We're never going to see you again. Also, this thing with the church, I really feel like I'm getting it on the ground level. I was like, the church's been around for 1,000 years at this point.
Oh man, that's funny. Because I was watching that episode just this morning, and that joke really tickled me. Because at first, what she says is, I know a lot of people say that Christianity is a bubble, and when she said bubble, at first I thought she meant like an insular community, like where we all get into our echo chamber, our bubble. But no, a bubble as in has it become? Market. Yeah, exactly. But I mean, I guess that joke still kind of it works for me, because if we're assuming that this is the Middle Ages and they've got to build those cathedrals that we now travel to all across Europe.
I'm just saying, the Middle Ages, that means that we're like post like all of the Nicene councils. I'm just saying that Europe is Christian at this point.
Okay, fair enough.
So was there an actual place called Lower Merkford? Because they reference Paris, so it's, I guess, the same. It's not like a fantasy universe where it's middle-aged. In that universe, it's like, I guess, our world. So was there a place with like lower and middle? I'm guessing there's an upper Merkford.
I mean, not that I'm aware of, and everything on Google is just coming up referring to miracle workers. I mean, I imagine there isn't a real Valdrogia either.
Yeah.
Oh God, I can't mute myself.
Let's see.
New technology.
8 seconds. Remember
that. Sorry, everybody.
Yeah, it looks like that's fictional. Same with Valdrogia.
I love the Valdrogian princess in like
that's so good
2-part finale. And I feel like she was in What We Do in the Shadow. She was the fake.
Mhm.
She pretended that she
The
got
fake
the
vampire that was vaping blood.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was hilarious about how she's been engaged 9 times. They all died of plague, so she's really worried that everybody's gonna have plague. And how about Fred Armisen as in the music festival episode?
Yes, perfect.
Now that was definitely Tom York from Radiohead, right?
Was it guessed?
I don't know.
I don't see Tom York.
No, I mean that's who
No.
that's who Fred Armisen was trying to evoke.
Okay, yeah, probably.
Like with his attitude
not play my old stuff. I'm not gonna play Creep. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not gonna play my old stuff. You're a bunch of sheep for buying this crap. And when he finally gets out on the stage, he's just going experiments with sound. Like that's everything after OK Computer.
No, that's everything after In Rainbows. I disagree with that assessment.
I guess they kind of came back with In Rainbows back to their senses, but man, what was that? Is A Moon-Shaped Pool? Is that the most recent one? Like
I don't know. I will say this, that I could not. There was no radio listening for me after, I think, Hail to the Thief.
But yeah, that's definitely. Oh, sorry, Tony. But that's definitely who I thought of when I saw Fred Armisen being an artiste on stage.
Hey, who? It was a jam, though. I want to listen to that one again. I was feeling. I liked the holiday episode where basically they're making fun of Trumpers. It's pretty topical. Well, sorry, I think for all of our fans if I isolate you with that comment.
Well, I think that's another one of those things that's universally humanity, of getting together with family over the holidays and being forced to kind of confront that. While I love this person from my family, they have some views that I cannot reconcile myself with.
Yeah, that and sectarianism has always been around.
Yeah, that too.
Oh, that reminds me, like another thing sorry to interrupt.
No,
they
go
just
ahead.
dropped is like there's another episode where it's kind of like trying to reform the relationship between Al, the shit shoveler, his daughter, and her brother, who's like an idiot. And then we're like, oh, we need to spend more time together. And then it just drops. Like they never spend time together again.
I would have to say that the brother was my least favorite character in the entire series.
He was kind of one note.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, one trick pony.
Yeah, if you need the fool, if you need somebody to make a mistake, then let's bring in Mikey. His one episode that really featured him with the gang, that was hilarious. I did enjoy that, especially poking fun of how they sing and dance together.
They wouldn't steal those guys. Something the thief. Something Sticky Fingers.
But it felt like all of the friends of Al, including her brother, we saw them a lot at the beginning. There was the little blonde girl and Wesley Pervert, and then I think there was a third one. Actually, the third guy, was he the one?
He was a carpenter.
Oh God, now I'm blanking. That other show we watched with the pastors.
Oh yeah, he was the Righteous Gemstones. He was the best friend of Adam DeMamp. I know that's not his name, and he's the guy from Workaholics. But
yeah, he was that like his like weird friend who lived in his house. But yeah, that we see those friends a lot at the beginning, and we kind of use them as foils for Al figuring out what she wants to do with her life. But then kind of those mid 6 episodes, they just kind of disappear and then reappear in the finale to be saved.
And the fact that they choose Al, didn't that feel a little uncharacteristic? Like it was just kind of like let's just make this easy, so since we're finishing out the story, and eliminate any type of possible restrictions or friction.
Oh, 100%. Oh yeah, and the Valdrogians putting them into a cell in the town square to execute them one by one. This isn't Game of Thrones. I'm not looking for like complete coherence in the story here. It's at some point you kind of have to suspend your disbelief here. But we're told that the Valjorgians are these like horrible bloodthirsty people. You know, wouldn't they just slaughter everybody? Like,
well, they were slaughtering literally everybody else except for that group.
Yeah. Are you saying it's kind of like the scene in Jean-Claude Van Johnson where they were going to fight Jean-Claude, like the 30 guys? They're like, wait, let's go in one at a time so we don't get in each other's way.
Exactly. That's exactly what I'm saying. But I think maybe this is just another symptom of this show not having a long enough run with these characters. Because I think having all of those other peripheral characters go away and then come back, I think could be explained or at least acknowledged by saying, oh, well, Al's been spending a lot of time with Prince Chauncey. And, you know, maybe we could have another one of these episodes of modern problems in ancient times where it's like, well, what do you do when you have to balance having to spend time with your new love interest, but you also want to spend time with your friends? But we never even went close to that. They just kind of showed back up at the end.
Yeah, they weren't her friends.
That's also true.
Yeah, that whole sequence at the end, man, it didn't make a lot of sense. You know, because the shit shelters, they're hunkered down in their house, and we're watching the flaming arrows rain down from the sky, and they're like, oh my god, we're all gonna die, how are we gonna get there? And then Al is like, oh, I know, I'll spend like an hour outside in the rain of arrows assembling this cart. Like, well, that just doesn't make a lot of sense.
Could this have been like they didn't have season 3 greenlit when they made season 2? And then they were kind of told, all right, we got to wrap this thing up. Because the ending was, like, there's just like a lot of conveniences stacked on top of each other to wrap it up quickly.
I had read that the second season was based off of an incomplete short story. So I wonder if that's maybe part of the problem, is that when they started making it, they didn't have an actual complete story.
Yeah, what I'm reading is that the second season finished airing in March 2020, and it was not renewed for a third season until the following August. So I guess that makes me wonder then, is when they decided to do season 2 as an anthology and completely separate, was that always the intention that season 3, if they got one, would be different, or was that even on their radars at that point?
I will say COVID kind of is an intervening, circumstance there. Probably also is a factor. March 2020 to August 2020. Just to say, like, at that point in time, I think we all were kind of like, what's going to happen? So that could also be a factor in why the delay. But from what I read, it was always supposed to be an anthological series. Like, it was always supposed to be this. So
interesting.
I thought that it was a cut and run type thing too, but when I dug into it, the guy, was it Simon Rich?
Mm-hmm.
He said that it was all about his short stories. So
right.
And the Heaven Inc. one is a short story that ends pretty much the way that the show ends.
Right. And this show also, it's hard to put my finger on exactly what gave it this feel, but there's something about American and British co-productions that have this kind of like weird third feeling to them, where it's not really one or the other, it's this kind of funky middle ground. I don't know if anybody else got that sense.
It doesn't feel
British humor, so I'm probably slightly immune to that.
Now, there was another show that this show really reminded me of, that I thought was connected, but I think is completely unrelated. And now I'm even blanking on what the show was called. But if I remember right, Aaron, you watched it. So if I describe it, this might jog your memory. But it was like the world was ending, and people all over the world were like scrambling to. I think there was a meteor coming in, and people were scrambling to deal with it. Johnson from Peep Show was like an American general. Is this ringing any bells? Am I imagining this?
Maybe Johnson, the guy that was in the Mosquito Coast.
Yeah.
Give me 1 second to research. Please, Van.
But anyway, that was just another, American-British co-production that, like, the writing and jokes felt a little weird. Still funny, still enjoyed it, but just this international mismatch just, kind of made it strange. And maybe it was just that both of those shows aired on TBS. But speaking of which, I think another weakness to this show, I think, just lies in the fact that it was made by TBS for TBS, because a lot of these episodes, they're only like 19 minutes long. And in this 2021 future with streaming where entertainment can be as long as you want it to be, maybe that contributed to this kind of clipped nature that we're describing about how this story just felt a little unfinished, a little unsatisfying.
Was it You, Me, and the Apocalypse?
Yes, that's what it was.
I can see that. Yeah. There's a quirkiness to British humor that I feel like this has, but it also feels very much like a traditional American like sitcom in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's just that it's the merger of those two different feels is what you're seeing.
Yeah.
A familiarity without it actually being one or the other.
Yeah, that's a good way of saying it.
You mentioned TBS for TBS. Like, that's another thing I think I mentioned to you. On the side was I wanted it not to be bleeped, or not beeped, but like the cursing, like the F words, or obviously they're saying the F word. I don't know. I think it would have been funnier, or it's like they weren't playing into the beeps, because like you can make the bleeps funny because they're coming, like in the way you word things or stuff. Like it seems like they're made to be non-bleeped. So I don't know why we couldn't get those on HBO Max where they have Game of Thrones level content.
Probably I think in the recording.
I think you might have gotten it right there. Is that just bleeps are funny? Because there's right now there's an animated Star Trek series that airs on Paramount Plus. 100% online, no censorship restrictions whatsoever. But they're still bleeping out curse words, and there's also been some visual censorship of some sexual content, believe it or not. And somebody asked one of the writers, "Why are you doing this? Why can't you just give us the curse words?" And he was like, "It's real simple. It's funnier with the bleeps."
I think I agree. It can be funnier. I like it when they play into the fact that it's going to be bleeped.
Yeah,
which I don't feel like this show really played into.
Yeah. Well, it's also kind of psychological. Like whenever America forced the music industry to add on the label, parental advisory, like there were bands that were like, let's say the F word so that we can get the parental advisory sticker on there because that's badass.
Do you happen to know, was that really Tipper Gore, as they always say?
She was one of the driving forces behind it. She wasn't the only one. It was a political movement, mother against drunk driving or anything else that these things kind of go through. But she absolutely was one of the pushing forces.
Well, thanks, Tipper.
It didn't do anything. That's my thing. Is that parental advisory? What did it do? Allow you to buy edited CDs from Walmart?
True.
I mean, the internet kind of changed everything.
Damn that internet.
I was actually my mom's computer, and I was transferring old files for her new computer, and there was like a folder called Napster. I was like, oh my god.
Do not open that. Viruses.
Man, when I was in college, I worked at Best Buy, and this was like 2009, 2010, and Best Buy had just bought Napster for God knows why. And we were supposed to be selling these people like Napster gift cards. And I was just like, are you freaking kidding me? Like, who's going to pay money for Napster? I guess Best Buy did.
Well, again, they almost had the idea, but streaming wasn't here yet.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, maybe if their intention was to somehow turn that into what Spotify became, but maybe that was just too long ago and not really in anybody's radars yet.
You got to remember, though, iTunes existed. People bought a shit ton of music through iTunes.
Yeah. I don't think there was a good, song management software, really. Not that iTunes was ever that great, but It was definitely the easiest to use. And literally everyone had iPods except for me.
I had a Zoom.
I had like a SanDisk thing. It worked sweet. I tell people
I
all
had
the time.
I had a buddy who had one of those. Like he had like the hard drive MP3 players, but the ones that came out right before the iPods did. And he was so pissed when iPods came out. He was like, I thought this was so fucking cool. Then iPods came out and ruined it for everybody.
Dude, yes, that's exactly my story. I was gonna say my parents were so good at they're like ahead of the curve on getting the gifts. They just got, I guess because we weren't really super wealthy, like they just got the cheap version. So I always had it first. Like, yeah, I had that SanDisk. It was like the size of like a big pack of gum, maybe, or like half of a Bubba Yubba pack of gum or something. And I was like the coolest kid on all the buses to school trips or sporting events. Everyone's like, "Oh, that's so sweet!" And then iPods came out, and just like, a million times better than everyone had them. I was like, "Dang it, that was cool for like a week." And then something similar happened. They got me like he's been around longer than I thought, but like electric scooter. Like I was in junior high. They got me this sweet little electric scooter. I'm sure it was super crappy, like by today's standards as far as speed and range, but I was like, I had that and I was so cool. And then like a month later, gas powered scooters came out with little seats on. They could go like 20. I was just like behind my friends. So I relate to that story. I'll give my parents props for being like ahead of the curve on knowing what was coming, just slightly less cool version of it.
Well, let me know what they get you this year.
I'm trying to convince them not to give me anything. I just want to wipe out presents from the Christmas experience. I'm a Ebenezer Scrooge.
Man.
Me and Christy don't do gifts for each other. We tend to go on a trip or something, but we do gifts for family. I'm an adult. I can buy things that I want.
I've already bought myself everything. It's that's what I was like, trading money in the form of an object.
Yeah, at this point, it's like, give me, I guess, clothing and stuff. Like, now I understand why they gave you clothing and shit at the holidays, because eventually you're going to have money. You can buy your own shit.
Well, I've personally got a different problem now where nobody buys me anything anymore. That's not the problem. They all buy it for my kid. The problem is I don't have anywhere to put all the crap that they buy for my kid. Like my brother and sister-in-law apparently wanted to buy my almost 2-year-old a tank. And I'm like, no. What the fuck?
Like a electric powered tank.
You make them hold it. You make them hold it for them. Yeah, he can come hang out at your house and drive that around.
You know, that's not such a bad idea because they don't have a kid.
They don't have a kid. They don't have storage problems. They want to have it. They can spend the money. And whenever he goes to visit auntie and uncle, gets to drive the tank around.
Man, that's not such a bad idea.
Solving problems.
I am full of great ideas.
Merry Christmas, everyone. Happy holidays. It's Hanukkah coming up, right?
It's Thanksgiving, dude. We haven't even got to December yet. The war on Thanksgiving needs to end. Sorry, I'm a big fan of Thanksgiving. So,
I guess related to Miracle Workers, we've been largely kind of negative. I guess on the positive side, I will say that there were moments on the show that were genuinely hilarious to me. I feel like the show, you and Jay and Aaron have been picking some winning comedies lately that just like totally slipped past me, and I've really enjoyed. And I'm just kind of like, man, what have I been doing? I guess I've been avoiding comedies, but I've been thoroughly enjoying the last few episodes.
That's excellent. Well, I guess we need to kind of do our ratings.
Sure, let's get in some ratings. I neglected to write down a pre-show rating, which is something we've done a few times. Did you guys happen to do that?
I didn't write it down, but I know what I looked at Chris. I was like, this is what I'm walking into the show with right now. So I know that number.
Okay, well, tell us.
So I walked in with a 6.5, and the reason why I did is I thought it was good. I thought it was funny, but I also felt that because of the choice to be an anthology, because of having the inability to really develop your characters, that it didn't land the way I would want it to. It didn't Like I felt like the world was interesting. The way that they were telling the story was fun. That there was a lot they could have done with that vehicle. You could have made a 3-season show out of just the Dark Ages, and it would have been great. But because they're doing the anthology, we get the glimpse. It's fun, it's cool, but it feels a little bit unsatisfying at the end. Now, I will say Daniel Radcliffe's performance was phenomenal. I thought he did great. I would recommend this show for people to watch, but it's a TBS show, like you said. It's not HBO. It's not even Netflix. It feels like a TBS show, and it's about that level of quality. So that's why I think I'm going to stick with a 6.5 for Miracle Worker Season 2.
All right, 6.5 shit shovels from Aaron before and after. All right, how about you, Tony?
I don't know if I had an exact number before. I know it was higher, and the discussion on the pod has brought it down. I don't think I'm going to go quite as low. Because there were some shining moments in there that I really enjoyed. The music festival and some other parts where I really did actually laugh out loud, which is something most shows get like a chuckle or a smile or something. So I think I'm going to end up with 7 shit shovels.
7 shit shovels from Tony. Okay. For me, I guess just playing off a comment that Tony made a minute ago, I don't mean to come in here and shit all over this show and talk so negatively about it. Overall, I was very positive about this show. I think it has a charm to it that it's a little hard to describe, and it's, I think, very hard to replicate. But I ended up caring about these characters and being interested in them and wanting them to succeed. And that's not an easy thing to do as a writer. But as we discussed, I think this show had some limitations put on it based on its production origin of coming from, the last gasps of American basic cable TV. When was the last time that you guys watched something on network television or basic cable? Like years?
I watched through the entirety of iZombie with Christy, which is, I think, I don't know what did UPN become?
CW.
Yeah, it's a CW show. So does that count?
Yeah, I'll take that. That's that might even be worse, but. For example, I'm guessing that neither one of you guys have cable service at home, right?
Nope.
I don't.
And haven't had for quite a few years?
Yeah. It's been a long time.
If it's not on streaming, I ain't watching.
Yeah, and
didn't want to give me those new customer deals.
Yeah, there you go. But I think ultimately where I land on Miracle Worker Season 2 is... I think I'm gonna agree with Aaron on a 6.5. I came in here at a 7. I think I'm gonna land at a 6.5. Where I think what I would say about the show is that it accomplishes what it sets out to do, but what it aims to do is not very ambitious. So it's almost like playing on easy mode, if that makes sense.
I think with the weaker cast, it would fail, but the cast is just so, to steal your word, charming, that even if it wasn't good, they just kind of carry it.
Like I think maybe something that puts Future Men above Miracle Workers for me is that Future Men had like a deeper emotional truth, a deeper theme throughout, which at least for me was, you can't change the past. The best that you can do is just accept your circumstances and try to make a better world wherever you are. Going back will just make things worse. While Miracle Workers, we did get those lessons and emotional truths, but they were kind of spoon-fed episode by episode, and each episode the lesson was different. And so I didn't come away with that more satisfying emotional feeling. So this is a good show. I would definitely recommend it to people, but is it amongst the greats of all time? No, I don't really think so.
I think that's a very fair assessment, and I agree with a lot of what you tend to say.
Well, thank you. Now, Tony, I apologize. I zoned out while you were speaking a minute ago. I got your 7 on the board. Did you have an initial score you wanted to put up?
I didn't narrow it down. I was maybe like half a shovel or a full shit shovel higher that I lowered it.
Okay, no worries. All right, well, we've got a 2 6.5s and a 7. 7 divided by 3. And we have a 6.6 repeating as our average score. And if you guys will give me a second, I can tell you where that stacks up all time for the show.
And while you're doing that, I'm going to go ahead and pull up the wheel of randomonium and get that on the screen. We have, and as per the rules of the show, I will not be offering a show for this next round. So we have from Tony, The Witcher on Netflix, and from Jay, seaQuest DSV. What exactly does DSV stand for?
If I remember right, it stands for Deep Sea Vehicle, maybe. This is a show from the early to mid 90s that I think was either in syndication or on UPN about a futuristic submarine. And if I remember correctly, I think it might have been set in the 2020s. But there's a talking dolphin. Roy Scheider's the captain. It's a lot.
Oh, we switched to your Audacity instead of the wheel.
We did because I accidentally clicked it and it wasn't ready to click, so I tried to cancel it.
You prematurely clicked it.
I did. I'm resharing so that we have a fresh. I went to, it was giving a red line around it for the share screen, and I was like, why is it doing that? And I guess just because I'm not used to Zoom, or I use a lot of Zoom, I'm not used to Skype. And Zoom, when it's red, it's like, oh, this is not active. And there's like a green thing around it. So I was like, oh, it's not showing anything.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I will say for miracle workers that whereas Future Man and maybe even What We Do in the Shadows is more like, I feel people need to have my same sense of humor to appreciate. I think this one could apply to the general public. Basically, anyone would like Miracle Workers if they like comedy.
It has a broader appeal. I agree.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. But a 6.6 repeating puts this show, just eyeballing it, right about in the middle. It's right above Man in the High Castle season 1, right below Fooly Cooley.
It's kind of funny. 6.66 repeating. The devil is real.
The sun is crazy. All right. Well, shall we? Tony, what is your offering for the wheel this week?
Mine is I double dipped with The Witcher. Being selfish. I want that dub with this 50% odds.
That's good odds.
Yeah, you know what my thought process with picking seaQuest was kind of along those lines. I've got an increased chance of getting picked this time around, so don't waste it. And I wanted to pick something that was almost the polar opposite of everything we've done recently. So seaQuest is a show that I watched as a kid. Apart from what I told you, that's really all I remember. So I'm really excited to see if it's terrible or what.
All right, well, here we go. I shuffle and we spin to win.
Let's go. Oh yeah, that's a big red area.
I was gonna say that was the most anticlimactic slowdown possible.
It's like slowing down for half the circle. Yeah, it's not gonna make it to the other.
All right, well, we got The Witcher.
Okay, sweet. Well, I described it a little bit last time when I nominated it, so everyone that always listens every single time to our pod needs no introduction. But it's kind of like a dark fantasy story. There's monsters and magic. It follows Henry Cavill as a Witcher, which is a mutated human that can wield magic, and their job is to destroy those monsters. And there's a larger story than that, but that's kind of like the setting.
Only one season?
So far, the reason I picked it is because season 2 should be launching this holiday season, so I wanted to get kind of like a refresher on it before the next season drops.
All right, well, I'm looking forward to that.
Well, that is super exciting. This may even have me going back to play the video game because I've heard good things about the game.
Yeah, that's a area where I haven't been too thorough because they're very highly regarded video games, and I haven't played any of them.
Well, I'm looking forward to it, and this has been a lot of fun, guys. I'm glad we're able to get together, talk about Miracle Workers. Listeners out there, join us next time for season 1 of The Witcher to get you ready for season 2 when that's coming out later. So for me, thank you very much for listening. I'll see you guys next time.
Salutation, Internet.
Goodbye.